System Town Hall welcomes Dr. Sabry addressing building awareness in our community in Brooklyn and beyond.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to this wonderful event. First of all, we express our sincere gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving us the tawfiq to gather here this evening. We also would like to express our gratitude to the organizers of the event for getting everybody together, and of course all the attendees who have taken the time out to be here this evening. The idea of the gathering this evening is to increase social awareness of what's going on. It's a very critical time for the nation. It's a very critical time for the society. And if we backtrack, you kind of have to wonder where some of these actually come from. People are sitting with young folks who were probably 20 years younger than I am. One of the first paper that I wrote when I was in undergrad, the gist of it was that the absence of ethics is the problem for contemporary social problems. I think it went above my head, went above my teacher's head, none of us really understood. But the point I was trying to make is, when an individual or a society lacks the moral fiber and life and society is run without certain standards, even if it's not quite in a state of anarchy, it almost gets there. And what happened in Texas, if we go back and look, it's truly because society as a whole has lost respect for each other, has lost respect for law, and truly has lost respect for one another. And the nation has never been so polarized or so divided. Issues like gun control should not be a political issue anymore because human lives are at stake. But this happened rather recently, but the biggest reason why this event was organized is to actually create awareness of some of the things that are social taboo, particularly in our culture. We don't like to talk about depression, we don't like to talk about mental health, we don't like to talk about physical disability or deformity. And having lost a young lady who's a distant relative recently, it really hits at the core of some of the issues that we need to really start bringing forward and start discussing. Because without discussion, we don't make any progress, and without discussion, we don't come to any solution. So I don't really have a whole lot to add on that front, but sadly enough, culturally, and I'll tell you from a personal story. When I was in St. Louis, I visited a family friend. They had only one son who was autistic, and he sort of towered over both his parents, and both parents had to pretty much give up everything just to care for this child. They didn't have much of a social life, they didn't go to places. But then, we understand that in the spectrum of autism, some of them are brilliant, socially may not be as adept, but culturally we tend to hide these people and hide some of the issues because we think that these are really problems, and the stigma that go with it are actually quite troubling. So why is moral sense so important for us? Most of us that grew up faith, our sense of standards, our sense of morality actually go back to our faith. Everything that the faith teaches you is to be decent, is to be good to one another. And I'm sure most of you that are present know this hadith, and for Judean people like you, hadith is really verses that were collected that our Prophet actually, peace be upon him, said from time to time. And one, the authentic one is that, what it takes to be a good Muslim. In order for you to be a good Muslim, you have to be a good human being first, right? Because the hadith itself said that a good Muslim is someone that Muslims are safe from. But the hierarchy of that is mu'min, which is when you attain a higher level of brotherhood or become a better Muslim. A mu'min is somebody that the society and the world is safe from. In other words, you can't be a good human being or a good Muslim without becoming a human being first. And I think when we move away from our core values of family, faith, religion, then we wind up somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and a lot of us still trying to figure out where we belong, where we fit in. Being an immigrant when I was a teenager, it was a constant struggle to try to fit in, try to assimilate, to try to take the better part of the Western culture and integrate. So it gives us a different set of outlook because you're sometimes looking in from outside and trying to see what we can inculcate in our life. But most importantly, without a certain set of standards and set of values, and I think this is why faith personally to me is so important, that it's difficult to navigate yourself. We're also coming an age, and I don't want to offend anybody because, I call myself on the being a progressive Muslim. But when certain standards are questioned, the family value is questioned, societal norm is questioned, you really, really have to wonder, where will we wind up? Now, the way the political divide now is that we've got two extremes. One believes in, ultimate guns and taking, rights away of individuals, reproductive rights, and I don't know how people feel about it. Then we've got the other extremes where anything and everything goes. There are very few people that are actually centrists. And I think what we need to do is find some common ground from either extreme so people can come into the middle, beyond the political spectrum, to actually have a better system, develop a better system for the society. The other thing that we also never considered as first generation, when people actually had to worry about putting food on the table, we didn't have time, or we didn't have the luxury of becoming civically engaged. I am thrilled to see that the next generation is actually becoming part of the process to try and make a difference. Because I always said, you can throw your arms in the air and holler all you want from outside looking in, it will not make a difference until you become a part of the system. So it's wonderful to see next generation actually becoming part of the process and bringing some of the issues on the forefront to try and do something about it. So it's a privilege to be here. I think this is just the beginning. I think this conversation should go on. I think these meetings should periodically take place and have more people involved, have the leaders of this community involved. So, and start focusing on issues that not so much we're comfortable with, but issues that are uncomfortable with that nobody wants to talk about. I was sitting at a meeting of my local masjid last night, and I said, the first thing that we need to start addressing now is the LGBTQ issue. Because most of you probably know that coming fall, it will start to be taught in classrooms from K through 12. I want my kids to learn about it from our moral leaders, religious leaders, from the families, before they actually start learning it from school, so they can extract for themselves, with our help, what's good, what's bad. Religion does not teach anybody to be discriminatory. However, for personal values, if we don't give the kids the core system from within the family, we can expect too much of it. So some of the things that we're not comfortable with, some of the topics that we never want, some of the murky areas that we never wanted to go. I think it's time to start addressing those issues one at a time, because it's the only way we'll get to a zone where we are comfortable dealing with one another with our differences, but finding common ground so we can still peacefully coexist. Because the idea of the society is not to dislike or hate, but the idea of cohabitation is to be able to have enough common grounds to be able to get along with one another. So I thank you again for the organizers, and I hope that this should just be a beginning. I see the other title also was that the title of the part of the program was the technology bridging the gap, and I'll take 30 seconds why it's important. I was driving to Delancey Street the other day, and I knew that there was never a masjid anywhere near there. I googled that, and within 2 blocks there was a masjid. So no matter where you are now, you can actually find yourselves to be, if you need a place of prayer, there's something always there. How do we find what brings us together? It's the technology that brings us together. Somebody actually said, this is the devil, right? But guess what? You can watch dirty movies here. You can also read Quran in here. So it all depends on how we use each medium for ourselves, right? So the technology is what brings us together, and let's expand on that technology to bring people together, different races together, all for a greater cause to building a better society. So thank you again for having me, and inshallah, we'll get together in the near future. Judy?